When you hear the name Wekiva River, most people think of folks having fun, paddling boats, or splashing around in the springs. But I bet you didn't know that Mercy Drive and W.D. Judge Road in Orlando are an important part of the Little Wekiva River system.
It's one of the things that many people don't know about the Mercy Drive area. If you're from Orlando, when people say Mercy Drive, oftentimes you think of the image or the portrayal that the media typically gives Mercy Drive of it being, having a lot of crime. In actuality, the Mercy Drive area is part of the Wekiva ecosystem. Just like the people who live on the Wekiva River live in the Wekiva ecosystem, we also live in the Wekiva ecosystem in this area.
But the health of the Little Wekiva River and the Evergreen Park community on W.D. Judge Road are in danger because the city of Orlando gave a developer permission to rip down environmentally sensitive woods to build Princeton Park, a massive warehouse complex.
We filed a lawsuit against the city of Orlando, the city commissioners, the mayor, and the developer because they have violated state law. They have, in voting unanimously for this project to move forward, they violated the Wekiva Parkway and Protection Act, which is a state statute creating and protecting the Wekiva study area. The land you see behind me is part of that Wekiva study area. It's the Little Wekiva River Basin and headwaters of not only the Little Wekiva River, but also the Wekiva River, one of the primary headwaters.
So what does all that mean for people who are not, when you say headwater, I mean, I didn't see a lot of dirt. I don't see any river there.
Right.
How can that be part of Wekiva River?
Headwaters are the area where a river starts, and typically they are primarily land with maybe a stream or a creek that is wandering through it. However, water from that land, because usually, in this case especially, they're wetlands, the water from the wetlands filters into the creek, and then the creek flows down into a larger river, or eventually becomes a larger river itself.
So now the community that's directly across the street, what is the name of the community?
Evergreen Park.
Okay, so now, and you said you've lived here just about your entire life?
I've lived here my entire life, essentially. So I'm very, very familiar with the land and with the wildlife and with the changes in the water throughout the year.
So, just listening to you kind of talk about this whole situation, you sound like more than the average neighborhood person. What's your background?
I have a PhD in ecology and conservation. I am very familiar with the ecosystems in terms of wetland ecosystems and also in terms of wildlife. The wildlife species that are here I've been observing my entire life, so I know what is present here, and I also know how important their habitat is. I know which ones are protected species, and we do have several protected species that live on that land. We have gopher tortoises, we have eastern indigo snakes that lived on that land. We'd see them frequently in the neighborhood throughout my entire life, and we've seen them recently, so we know that they are there. This is destroying our community. We have people who are, especially right here on W.D. Judge, who cannot live this way with all this construction and with the expectation of having 700 daily, having semi-trucks coming up and down the road 24/7, and the lights that will be on the property. They didn't sign up for this when they moved here. The sad thing about it is that most of them plan to live their entire life here and leave this house for their children because it was in this green oasis. And now they feel that they're being forced to move because they can't stand this. This nuisance was brought to my community. This nuisance was brought to us. We did not go to the nuisance. It was brought to us, and that's just wrong, especially when citizens, the community, have expressed their opposition multiple times, not only to City Council, but over 100 citizen letters sent to the St. Johns River Water Management District, asking them to not grant them the wetlands permit to be able to destroy the wetlands. Also to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, letters sent to them asking them also not to grant them the application that they applied for. And all of that has been for naught.
Here's how a city spokeswoman responded. The City Council carefully considered public input, the area's predominantly industrial uses, the project's inclusion of environmental protections, and the requirement the project comply with all state and local environmental regulations to make a fair and balanced decision that follows the letter of the law.
This is a case of environmental injustice because it's a situation where Communities are being impacted, and the communities that are being impacted are communities that typically cannot afford to hire an attorney for 3 years to keep this in litigation to stop them from doing this. The developer is rather wealthy and has one of the more expensive law firms on retainer, so they can afford to litigate for years and years.